Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian Ant and I'm here today to talk about passenger missions. Firstly though, please excuse the hoarseness of my voice. I've got a bit of a sore throat at the moment. I'm hoping it's going to disappear, but for now it's obviously here and it sounds a little bit odd. Chances are I picked something up at EGX. There was a whole lot of people floating around, so who knows. Now it's still very much up in the air as to whether we're going to get passenger missions. And 1.5 as well as Horizons are, relatively speaking, around the corner. They should be hitting before the end of the year. Now, we do know that Frontier quite regularly leave announcements such as this until the last minute before they let us know what's actually coming. So it's still quite possible that we're going to get passenger missions. Now, I've got a valid reason why I think we probably will get them, and I'm going to talk about that, and then I'm going to talk about just what passenger missions may bring to us. So, why do I think we're going to get passenger missions? Well, we know something very simple. Frontier have told us that we're going to have 31 ships when the 1.5 update hits, along with Horizons. That includes the Cobra Mark IV, of course. Currently in game, there are 23 ships. At least if you include the new ships that are in patch 1.4. And that's not including the Condor, which I'm not including because currently it's not configurable in any way at all. It's only available in CQC, and Frontier have shown it as available as a deployable fighter, but it's obviously not clearly a ship that can be used on its own, so I'm not going to include that. So, depending on how you count it, it means we've got 8 new ships yet to arrive. 5 of them have already been announced. These are the Cobra Mark IV, the Federal Corvette, the Imperial Cutter, the Asp Scout, and the Viper Mark IV. So that leaves 3 more ships yet to be announced. Now, we do know of 3 other ships that Frontier have talked about previously and that they have shown us concept art of and given us quite extensive details on. One of these is the Panther LX, which is shown as the Panther Clipper in the concept art. And the other 2 are passenger class ships, the Beluga Liner and the Dolphin. And I suspect it's highly likely and very plausible that these are the 3 ships that are remaining to be announced. We do know that Frontier has said that Horizons will contain much larger cargo ships than we currently have, and the Panther is indeed much larger than any of the cargo ships that exist in the game at the moment. And that leaves the other 2 to potentially be the liner ships, the passenger ships. Now, why haven't Frontier told us about these already? Well, traditionally, as I mentioned earlier, Frontier like to spread their announcements out. Just look at the initial announcement for Horizons at Gamescom, and then the more recent announcements we had at EGX. I'm sure Frontier have got a few more things up their sleeves yet. In addition to that, announcing the passenger ships at EGX would have kind of given away the fact that we might be getting passenger missions. Now, we also know that the modules for passenger ships already exist in the game. That's the cabins. Their files for them exist currently within the game's directory structure. They can be found just by navigating through the files and having a look for yourself. So it would seem that certain assets already exist within the game, although they haven't currently been made available to us. So then, what would passenger missions entail? What would they mean for us? Let's have a look back at what's been discussed on the subject so far during the earlier development of the game. There's been fairly brief snippets and there's been quite some extensive information as well. Very early on, back in Newsletter 14, when the initial suits were discussed, the flight suit, the Remlock jackets that we wear, it was mentioned that these are generally only worn by pilots and that passengers may wear them in smaller vessels. But it was also mentioned that passengers on dedicated liners and similar vessels would generally wear regular clothing, although access to these specialised Remlock suits is still available for dangerous situations, like an abandoned ship alert. So that was one very brief mention. It was brought up again in Dev Diary number 5, where David Braben talks about the subject specifically and in fair amount of detail, where in essence he told us that passenger missions represent a great opportunity for the game and enable a variety of different mission types, things that are very different to what we currently have now. He was very keen to express that passenger missions bring more life to the game because obviously you're transporting other characters and that these can bring more activity to missions. For example, they may ask you en route to a particular destination to divert course and head somewhere else so that they can complete a particular agenda or mission they have themselves. Or perhaps a pirate outfit or an assassin hears of the passenger you're carrying and may attempt to interdict you in order to assassinate, or even perhaps a trade for them. Now this, for me, adds a bit more fuel to the fire that we may be getting passenger missions very soon. Obviously, David Braben and Frontier want passenger missions to bring life to the game. That would mean we'd need visible NPCs, ones that at least are viewable through portraits in the mission screens or interaction screens. Now that's something obviously we currently haven't got. The game doesn't at the moment have the ability to generate NPCs in that manner. But obviously at EGX, avatar generation and character creation was announced, which means naturally that the game would have the ability to display portraits of characters. Now there's a whole bunch more information on passenger missions in the Elite Dangerous design documents. These are available in the design discussion archive, and although Frontier haven't 100% followed these documents to the letter since release, they have generally followed the outline of them. There is of course quite a bit of debate and controversy over how Frontier and the players themselves have followed and interpreted these design discussions, but outside of that controversy they do serve as a general guideline of what we can expect. So what do they have to say? Well, let's have a look. It tells us initially that players can carry passengers in the ship's cargo hold, in stasis tubes or in rudimentary cabins, but that these are considered a rough way of travelling, which allows players to transport passengers from A to B just for a basic fee. So obviously passengers are not going to be that keen on this because it's not exactly a luxurious ride, and it also opens up the potential for them to be abducted and taken to a destination that they don't want to go to, such as a slave depot. Obviously once someone's asleep and stuck in stasis and then stuck in a cargo hold, they have no say where they're going. And it would be very easy to go and take these people and sell them to the black market. Now this is a gameplay mechanic that may well be included in the game. It may be an option we have. It might not be the most lucrative way to make money, and it may not be the most moral way to make money, but it would be interesting to see this appear in game, and it would give players an interesting target to chase down. If you know a player's doing this sort of thing, I'm sure there'd be a lot of people out there that would want to try and put a stop to it. Now for those passengers that have a bit more money and don't want to risk travelling that way or can afford to travel in luxury, this is where the passenger liners come in. Liners can be fitted with cabins, and that's the cabins probably that we already have as files in the game. They can be fitted with high-end passenger cabins, and they feature a number of things to keep passengers comfortable and entertained. Or so the design document tells us. Remember, a lot of glitter and sparkle is added to these discussions, and when we get the final version it may not be quite up to what is initially described, but like I said, we do know that the general outline does tend to stick. So that said, we can pretty much guarantee that it will be possible to buy various types of passenger cabins. The document goes on to tell us that there might be 5 classes of cabins, the first 2 of which can be fitted to any ship, the last 3 can be fitted only to liners. So class 1 is a stasis tube rack, class 2 is basic passenger cabin, class 3 is a travel cabin, class 4 is a first class cabin, and class 5 the luxury cabin. So we've already discussed the stasis rack and the basic passenger cabin, but class 3, the travel cabin, allows up to 2 passengers to be transported in relatively civilized state. This is the equivalent of travelling in second class today. Passengers in basic cabins have a chance of offering the player medium paying missions en route. So this goes back to what David Braben was saying in his earlier dev diary, that when passengers are along for the ride, they may offer you additional missions while you're travelling along. Again, this of course will bring a lot more life to the game and give it a lot more depth, and that's something I'd really like to see. Class 4 cabins. This is the first class cabin. These are powered cabins that allow up to 4 passengers to be transported in high quality surroundings, and players would have a number of facilities and services available to them, automated by the room. Passengers in first class cabins have a good chance of offering the player medium to high pay missions en route. First class cabins can only be fitted to liners. So again, at the mention of extra missions en route, and obviously it would suggest that the better your ship is equipped, the more high class, the more rich type of customer or passenger you can transport. Finally, the Class 5 luxury cabin. This is a powered cabin that allows up to 4 passengers to be transported in absolute luxury. Passengers in luxury cabins have a high chance of offering the player a high paying mission en route. Now obviously we don't know if this is exactly how it's going to all play out. We don't know if there's going to be different cabin sizes, but we can look to other elements of the game where we do indeed have different specs of modules and different sizes of modules, so it would make sense, wouldn't it? The design document goes on to explain the terms of accepting a passenger mission and delivering them. It gets into quite a lot of detail, and it's probably a little bit too long to go into extensively on this particular video, but in essence a player would be able to pick a passenger up from a bulletin board mission, but the type of passenger they could pick up will be determined by the type of ship they have available to them. So as with other missions, there'd probably be quite strict requirements to them. It's also worth keeping in mind that this is where permits could come to be a lot more useful. Obviously, if you pick up a passenger that wants to be taken to Alioth or any other system that requires a permit, perhaps Sol or something like that, then obviously you're not going to be able to do that mission if you don't have the relevant permit. So in many ways, passenger missions bring together and lock in a lot of the different elements to the game that have been released over the previous year, as well as seem to be fairly dependent on some of the upcoming content to be released over the next few months. And this would explain why the wait for passenger missions has been so long and why we have probably heard so relatively little about it. So, all entirely speculation at the moment, but I think it's built on a very good foundation, and hopefully it's something we're going to see very soon. If you want to go take a look at the design document for yourself, I've linked that in the video description. There's a lot of information there that's worth a look at. For now, I think that just about covers everything I can fit into this video, so as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time. I've got a question. Whatever happened to salvaging in Elite Dangerous? Well, as you can see in the video in the background, it was very much to be a thing, and I'm sure it's going to be a thing at some point in the future, although that time don't seem to be yet. You know, I perhaps could have put salvaging on my most recent top 10 most anticipated updates for Elite Dangerous. It didn't quite make it. There's many things I do want to see in the game, and this didn't quite make the list, although I think it's going to add a lot of depth to the game.